On Business Security Weekly, each week we address the challenges facing CISOs through our guest interviews, including former and active CISOs. Our news segment is focused on leadership and communications to better help security leaders translate and communicate security risks into business risks. Jason Albuquerque, Ben Carr, Tyler Robinson, and others add their expertise to the conversation. I'm Matt Alderman, and I hope you search for Business Security Weekly in your favorite podcast catcher and subscribe to download our latest content.
Welcome back, everyone, to Paul's Security Weekly. A quick announcement. Get ready for an electrifying experience at the 15th Annual Identiverse. Join 3,000 plus identity professionals at the Aria Resort and Casino in Las Vegas, May 28th through the 31st, 2024, for 4 days packed with dynamic learning and collaboration. Don't miss out on keynote speakers, including Denis Defory, CISO of United Airlines, Tucker Bryant, entrepreneur and former Googler,
Wow.
George Roberts, Director of Identity and Access Engineering at McDonald's, and more. As a community member, receive 25% off your Identiverse 2024 tickets using the code IDV-24 IDV24-SW25. IDV24-SW25. You can register at securityweekly.com/IDV 2024.
Wow, there's a little bit of struggle bus on that one.
There was. I did not read that, obviously, before the show started. We have added Mr. Sam Bound. Sam, welcome.
Good evening. Good evening. Glad to be here.
Yes, Lee Neely is lurking somewhere. He's on, but he's not on the mic.
This is a great opportunity to cut to Lee and to say that, I got a really awesome opportunity to get to hang out with Lee for a little bit while we were at RSA. And
that's right. His cloaking mechanism is on right now.
So, it's on fire.
Yes. Let's see. So make sure you go to the show notes for this episode, securityweekly.com/PSW-829. We've got a lot of stories because we did not do news last week.
Correct.
So we got a lot of catching up to do.
And there's a good possibility we won't get through all of them.
Probably not.
So there's a whole bunch of stuff there that you may want to follow up on that we don't cover.
I will try and start with ones that we all collectively had in common, except for Lee, because he's not at the microphone just yet. But let's see, which one did Sam and I have in common that Lee doesn't have now? I gotta do. Oh, we can talk about the tunnel vision.
Yeah.
Yes.
I mean, who used DHCP option 121 anyway?
Apparently somebody does. They say if you turn it off, it'll break some enterprise stuff.
I'm sure. I was thinking the same thing when I was recommending that. Basically, DHCP option 121 is extra routes. And if you think about how routing tables work, or you link to the show notes if you need a refresher, or you don't know how VPNs and DHCP and networking stuff works, you should totally read like TCP/IP Illustrated Volume 1. If you're going to be in this field, just highly recommended. However, it means when you get a DHCP allocation, IP address, and routes, you can get extra routes through this extra option. If those extra routes have a higher priority, if you will, for lack of a better term, than the routes that are put there by your VPN.
A lower metric.
Lower metric, thank you.
Yep.
Lower metric wins, which means that basically attackers can rewrite your routing table, essentially, and route traffic where they want to, as opposed to where your VPN would normally route the traffic.
Right. But the question is, what are the consequences? So they managed to do like a man-in-the-middle attack, as if they'd done ARP spoofing. So they're intercepting your traffic, but is it encrypted? I just found another article, too late to put in the notes, that claims that even if you got yourself in the middle, the traffic would still be encrypted. And I don't know enough about how VPN software works to decide that, but how I thought it worked was it only encrypted traffic going out the virtual adapter created by the VPN software. And if you routed it to go directly out the physical adapter, it would not be
encrypted. That's the way I would interpret it, as the latter. Yes.
Yeah, in that case, this is really a serious problem and has to be fixed. But the experts in the field say it isn't. And I feel like I need to get it going and use Wireshark to find out.
And I think this also depends on how your VPN concentrator is configured to allow split tunneling or not.
Yeah.
Because I'm thinking about that. If you didn't allow split tunneling and you started sending stuff out that could be a really bad thing. But there's also a good possibility you're firing up a VPN, not just to get around potential restrictions and making sure your stuff is protected at the endpoint. But it may also be to get access to resources you don't want directly connected to the internet, which now aren't going to connect anywhere.
Well, VPNs leak a lot anyway. And by the way, another thing is everything is HTTPS now anyway. So you don't really need the VPN for privacy. You only need it for getting around blocks.
But I thought,
I will
say
say
the
not
perfect forward
everything's
secrecy
HTTPS, but-
keys encrypted that traffic as it was leaving. So it both has an encrypted tunnel as well as the perfect forward secrecy key that encrypts the information on outbound.
Yeah, so it's
So it would encrypt everything, including where you're going, not just the data that is encapsulated, right? So they're
right,
and that's why people use it to get around restrictions. So
But
if you talk to a high school student and ask them, and they were like, "Oh, I use a VPN when I'm at school because it gets around certain restrictions," and I think it's the perfect forward secrecy, right, that Tyler's talking about, that it affords that kind of luxury because it's for privacy, right? But now an attacker's still going to be on the same subnet in order to execute this attack, right? They got to set up a malicious DHCP server. They got to win the race, ARP spoof. The research from blah 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 Leviathan Security, if I said that correctly, walks you through, like, if you were to ask ChatGPT to explain networking concepts to you as if you were in middle school, roughly, I think that's what the translation would be in the blog post. So that link is in the show notes. The other thing I had was WireGuard lets you configure namespaces, which I wasn't exactly sure how it works, but they somehow get around the routing table issue with the idea of namespaces.
And supposedly, if you run in a virtual machine in NAT mode, you're immune, or if you use Android, you're immune.
Because Android ignores DHCP option 121.
Yeah.
Yep.
I mean,
And that is that taking into account also like the difference between like Ike V2 and OpenVPN and PPTP, like all of those, one of those is challenge response. So like what you're getting from that DHCP and how that protocol passes out, those might be different across those protocols, right?
I don't
Yeah,
know.
I'm not sure if this is IPsec specific, Tyler. I think it's more targeted at the VPNs where people just use them for privacy.
Man,
But I think this is at a lower level. This would be before any of that happens, right? This is when you're getting your IP address.
Correct.
Yep. So instead of going to the VPN, setting your traffic over the VPN connection, establish the VPN connection.
Based on an interface in this case.
But instead of sending your traffic to your
over that interface,
to that interface, now you're going to go to this other interface, which has a lower metric, which is your public interface instead.
Well, it's going to use your Ethernet adapter interface that's not like your ton zero adapter in Linux, and that traffic is going to be not encrypted using the VPN technology.
Right. And it's been up forever since I've heard PPTP, because we used to refer to that as, because it was so horribly weak. Point-to-point toilet paper.
Yep.
Yeah. Well, another thing about VPNs is I think 80% of the time they leak out traffic for DNS and other things. The VPN client should really be testing and making sure all the traffic goes through the VPN, which is almost never the case.
Most of them have settings to do that. They have use RDNS or block any of the leak protocols, deny local LAN traffic. Like it takes a lot of configuration, even on like private internet access. Like the defaults are pretty good, but like there's some serious advanced networking in there that people aren't going to enable that by default.
Yeah, Lee had a comment in there.
So I was going to say, and just kind of what Tyler was saying, that a lot of the VPNs to be functional, and I'm not talking about the ones that kids are using, the corporate VPNs. You've got to allow some local network access so they can access file and print servers on their LAN, but you don't want to go full split tunnel, which is what this is doing. It allows the to escape, but to absolutely allow no other traffic anywhere might work fine on your phone, but on you're trying to do work, it's not gonna work very well.
Updates, configuration updates,
right?
Local LAN traffic,
right? And then until we get to TLS 1.3, the server names in the web requests are still plain text. but the traffic and the data isn't. And we still have we're still not doing DOH, DOT everywhere. So, but there's a hell of a lot less that leaks out than there used to be.
I mean, we could have just all went IPv6 and a lot of this would have been fixed. With
Sure.
Alternatively, while we're talking VPNs, I'm realizing that there's something I got to do. Only because I had a failure the other day, and it's my second failure on my backup device. I need to upgrade my home network a little bit. It's time to it's time to replace a gateway firewall from those those fanless PCs that Tyler recommended probably 7 years ago. Because I had one completely fail.
I've already had this conversation with Tyler, and we agreed that we should all just get a Dream Machine.
Really?
That's as I told you so, Face.
Yeah. The enterprise one, what did you say it was?
The Dream Machine Pro V2 or SE. If you really want to spend a little bit extra, you can go with the they just released one more, and it only adds a couple minor things, but the Pro SE. Yeah, Dream Machine Pro.
Can I do WireGuard to that?
Yeah.
I think it uses WireGuard. Does it use WireGuard under the covers? Probably. Most do now, right?
Yeah, there's a lot of settings and things that can help you fix. It's really nice. So it's plug and play, very secure.
But it's not easily like to take your network from what it is today. If you've got like me, some random Ubiquity gear thrown around,
you just go full Ubiquity. Like as long as you just invest in
the transition's not pretty. I watched a couple of YouTube videos on people that had done it, and they're like, "There's no easy migration." I should say.
Yeah, just if you
basically
get a couple 6 access points, that'll cover your entire block. And
I read it as get a couple of 6-packs and have a weekend where,
density might be a thing. Like you can turn the radio down a little bit, but like density becomes a thing.
Yeah, but you think about all your devices on there that. They got to renegotiate.
And I prioritize zones for my laptops and SSID power for different areas I go work in.
But you got to readopt all your access points.
That's fast. Like, and all those configs can be backed up real quick and pulled right in. Like, I just redid the entire one.
You need a migration plan for your home network, Larry. That's what I'm saying.
That's what you're saying. Yeah. I think arguably, like, I'm thinking about like that at home, that like everything connects to one network, and it wouldn't be a horrible thing to just go touch a bunch of stuff. A bunch of the stuff that like I don't care if it's on a network anymore, like some of my IoT stuff, because it's just so horribly broken and needs to be replaced. I think there's really only one thing that would be a problem, and that's my Tesla Powerwall, because it only likes to connect to one specific network, and it's not a network that you would expect it to connect to. And like I have 6 SSIDs at my house, and the Powerwall will only connect to one of them, and it's not the one I want it to connect to. So you can
do band steering and client preference that does some interesting things too.
Back to getting the couple of 6-packs and spending the weekend. Yep.
Yeah, it's really nice. You can isolate multiple networks. There's some serious configurations that you can run down for different SSIDs, different networks, different isolation levels for IoT, non-isolation levels, and traffic bending rules, so that your wife's phone can change the Roku while being on a separate network, while still having threat detection enabled. Like, it's pretty straightforward.
We just need to buy Tyler a couple of 6-packs and come have him set up my home network. Could be an option.
Now, that would be a pro tip,
right?
Yeah. So it's worth it. I would.
So Larry, how'd you get to get all the way to Wi-Fi 7? Come on.
Well, this is my thing.
I don't have any devices that it's supported because I'm cheap.
If you want to put this project off even more, you just do what I do, and you run Linux on your laptops, and then you're so preoccupied getting them to work and getting them on the latest kernel version 6.9, which is what I did this week, that you don't have time for your home network, and it sits there like the cobbler's children's shoes, or whatever the acronym or whatever it is. Yeah, right.
Cobbler's kids' shoes are always the worst.
Yeah. So
you can outsource your Ubiquity cloud to multiple administrators that can add them to their account as a limited or
sounds like
full
a great
admin,
plan.
and then help them help.
Great plan. Sounds like Raspberry Pi Connect, sort of.
Yeah. See, Lee's heard that analogy about the cobbler's kids' shoes fairly recently. You might have heard it.
Yeah, somewhere there was a couple of people 45,000 of our closest friends.
Yeah.
I want to hear about this confusion attack. Like I started reading on it and I read some of the details, but I was waiting to hear what.
Wait,
Larry,
which attack?
Have you read up on this? The Wi-Fi
The
confusion.
confusion attack.
Oh, yeah, that's a good segue.
Yeah, I read it. Admittedly, it was a little bit later at night, so I was
Drinking.
I did the same.
No, actually, I wasn't. Just due to recent health stuff, I haven't been doing a heck of a lot. But I was tired, and I think the big one was it seemed to me that it was very much an evil twin attack because you can't authenticate the SSID. There are limited options for authenticating the SSID, and even the ones you can are not great. But it had to be via credential reuse. So
if you have the credential, why does it matter?
Exactly.
That was what I took out of it, but it was late, and I was like, okay, I didn't read this right.
Yeah, I mean that was the same thing. That was the same thing. Like, yeah, you're standing up an evil twin, but the evil twin is configured exactly like the legitimate network with the same name and the same credentials. Now, I'm wondering if it was because you were getting the credentials from another network that were being reused somewhere else, and like the credential reuse part came up, but you had to have the credentials for those networks to stand them up, to have them.
But didn't that just provide you the encryption key that's used during the authentication? Isn't that all that it was given you by doing this attack? Wasn't that the premise of the attack? Was you got the encryption key for that network? Which, if you have the password.
But yeah, that would be almost like chicken egg problem. Like, which came first, the chicken or the egg? Do you need the password to get the password for the network?
So is the goal then isn't the source network you're impersonating? The goal is getting whatever that client's doing, right?
Yeah, the client.
You want the client, right? Because you can't get the client just because you know the pre-shared key. You can't get the client's traffic.
Right.
But that's the evil twin attack, no?
Right. Yeah, I mean, arguably, it's an evil twin attack against an encrypted network, which required you to. And I may be completely misunderstanding this because the people that the person that released this was Matthew Van Oofen team, and Matthew is a smart freaking cookie, given that he gave us crack, and won all of the Dragon Blood attacks against WPA3 before really anybody had adopted it, and had his fingers a little bit in, I think, the crooked stuff as well, and there was one others, but like, I mean, admittedly, it's a valid attack. But it seemed very convoluted and didn't have a ton of impact. Maybe that's why it's not getting as much press as some of the other stuff we've seen. That was my impression.
I want to go back to Linux kernel 6.9.
Yeah, we get it. You run Arch. Well, next.
Right? Such a funny meme. I mean, I do run Arch, but I run the Arch. I run the Arch with training wheels. That's it. Which is called Manjaro. So yeah, even at that, well, I wanted to get to Linux kernel 6.9 because Manjaro had a stable update that made available kernel 6.8 and 6.9. 6.9 has some stuff in there for both performance and security, especially on AMD chips. So it enables the AMD SEV. What does the SEV stand for now?
Do people still use AMD chips?
Oh yeah, dude. They're like becoming more popular on the desktop.
Oh, that was wrong.
It's just wrong, man. It's just wrong. But you're not an AMD fan, huh? I don't know. I mean, I could go either way, to be honest with you.
You've heard that about you.
I used to be. I just haven't seen anything that keeps up with speed, security, and or comparability to any of the i7 plus.
Here's what it comes down to. A lot of times it's cheap. A lot of times it's cheaper.
Yep.
Yeah.
With arguably equivalent performance. I mean, that's what I remember from back in the day when I was building. It was as equivalent, if not maybe a little better than Intel.
It comes down to what I'm building and
third of the price.
It's what I'm building or configuring, right? My desktop at home, I had this ridiculous goal that I wanted 256 gigs of RAM, right? And most of the Intel chips, at least on the consumer side, unless you went Xeon, were limited to 128. But AMD has the Threadripper line, which at some juncture made a fairly affordable, whichever the one I have on my desktop at home, 24 core Threadripper processor that supported 256 gigs of RAM. And that's coming up on like 4 years old for me now.
Yeah, and like it
And
still runs like a champ.
It's still totally fine.
Like
so I'm
that-
like, oh, I want to be kernel 6.9. My framework 16 is also a newer AMD chip on this one, and my other framework is Intel.
Yep. That reminds me of the VMware box that I built eons ago.
Mm-hmm.
That it was like 16 cores and as much RAM as I think it was 128 gigs of RAM, which was the most you could put in something at the time. And I spent like $3,800 on this box, and I ran it for a decade.
Yeah,
running multiple VMs, and it barely even touched the CPU like mark on it at any given point.
So I wanted to go kernel 6.9, which I did on all of my laptops, and got them all successfully upgraded to the latest stable Manjaro, which was an interesting one. It wasn't as easy as some of the other upgrades. Usually like once a year, and this is the thing, once a year they will upgrade the Python interpreter in main Python library, which means any package you have that's on the previous Python interpreter has to be rebuilt, and there's a bunch of hoops you got to jump through, but it's only once a year. And it wasn't that impactful. I had a couple other like small bugs I worked through, but it's all good now. Like my stuff's working pretty well on 6.9. I had to rebuild the Slack package. I think because some of those, I think they updated Electron, the Electron library. So I had to rebuild Slack, and not rebuild from source, but just rebuild the package inside the package manager in Manjaro, which was fine. And then also during this, I fixed this laptop that's in front of me, my framework 16, because there was two things due to user error. I was stuck at a UEFI boot prompt, and I closed my laptop, and I stuffed it in my bag, and I went home. And when I pulled it out, it was so like hot, like a piece of electronics that was so hot I couldn't put my hand on it. But no smoke, which had never happened. Usually when it's that hot, there's smoke. Right?
Yeah.
There was no smoke.
I've had that happen more than once with my Mac laptop. Like coming to go here, and it's like cranking on fans.
But
close it and throw it in that neoprene case.
Yes. Oh, that's what I did. Yeah, it's like there's a neoprene case built into my GoRuck that it holds. So anyway, the result of that was
that's how you get all those cold solder joints out of your laptop.
Yes. So you heard the fan noise that was happening after that on this laptop. I think you might have heard it, right? And so now this is nothing against framework, because this is total like user error. The plus side for framework is I can completely take apart my laptop with like not that many screws, and everything's modular. So I'm like, oh, I'll just take it apart and like we'll investigate. And when I took it apart the first time, I didn't follow the instructions the way that framework wrote them. And the power button is like a ribbon cable that connects to the the motherboard. And I forgot to disconnect that. Like the instructions clearly said, make sure you disconnect it. Here's how you disconnect it, because it's kind of a weird connector I hadn't seen before. And I didn't do that. And I ripped the like ribbon cable in half. I'm like, now the advantage with framework, and they're not a sponsor of the show in any capacity. I like them as a company. I can order a new power button. It was like, I don't know, like $16, $16.99 or something like that.
Right, so $16 mistake. No big deal.
So I ordered a new one.
How much for that overnight shipping?
No, I didn't know. I have this is why I have multiple laptops. I wasn't sweating it, Lee, because I have backups, right? So I used my Intel framework, and it was totally fine. And then so I put the new power button ribbon cable thing in, and I investigate the fan noise. And what I figured out was underneath the fan, there's this black like heat shrink kind of tape underneath it. In the laptop, best I know or can guess, is that the adhesive was heated up so much that it removed some of this heat shrink kind of tape, and it was hitting the fan, making that noise. So I took my spudger tool, right, and I just put the sticky stuff back down and made sure it was all nice, put it back together, and everything was fine. It was totally silent. Hasn't returned. I've been using it for all week now, and it's been totally fine.
The only thing I will say is that I noticed that keyboard has some nice little LEDs on either side that don't work.
Oh, I have to program those.
Uh-huh.
Yeah. No, they do work when it boots up.
I2C firmware flash, is that what caused it? Was I2C?
No.
failure?
The LEDs work. They're just fine. I haven't programmed them to do anything with it. But when the laptop boots up, they have a default. They're just RP2040s that power the LED panels on the either side of the framework. So they give you a tool set to program them. I just haven't reprogrammed them to say stuff.
Because you just made it you just got it working.
I got it all working, and then I updated Manjaro, and that was the whole mission. Because also, if you're on KDE, they updated Plasma to the latest version, and a lot of people lost their customizations and all that stuff too. So I didn't have a lot of customizations because I just started playing around with KDE because I'm like, I don't know, I want a new desktop manager to mess around with. And it's very Windows-like and exposes a lot of configuration in the GUI interface, which I don't know that I'm a huge fan of. I think I'd rather prefer GNOME. In any case, that's how I got to kernel 6.9.
So are you telling us you fixed everything that wasn't broken until it was?
Yes, that's exactly. Yes.
Of course, I've never done that, and none of the rest of us have either, right?
Not Framework's fault, and they actually made it easy for me to fix my user's stupid mistakes. So,
which is cool. That actually is nice to know.
It was kind of frightening. Like I was very focused when I was doing it, so I didn't stop to take pictures. But having the entire laptop apart is kind of frightening. But they make it super. Everything's labeled, numbered. There's QR codes on like every single part. You can go right to the website and figure what the part is. It's awesome. It was an awesome experience. Well, had I not made those mistakes, it probably would have been a better experience. But I was able to recover. So anyway, go to kernel 6.9. It's a great place to be.
Yeah, there's definitely some interesting security pieces in here.
There's a lot of cool stuff, a lot of great driver support. Like I've been reading about it. It's like good stuff happening.
And like we've talked about before too, the shift to the Rust-based kernel code too. This is the kind of precursor to allowing that to happen.
Correct.
That's pretty cool. I did not realize that one had so many changes in it.
Well, while we're speaking of kernels and hardware, Paul, one story that I picked up on that I didn't put in that you did is that your story number 23. Here's your chance to own a decommissioned U.S. government supercomputer, Cheyenne.
I think
I literally looked at that bidding for quite a while, several nights.
145,152 core Cheyenne supercomputer in 2016 was the 20th most powerful computer in the world.
It's liquid cooled.
Yep. It is.
And I don't believe they deliver.
Yep. They do not. Like just looking at the requirements for the shipping company for dismantling and or the power requirements, which actually weren't that bad. I think it was like 1.3 megawatts. This was weeks ago.
Oh, is that it?
It's only like 1.3 megawatts to get it up and going, which
I got an outlet.
Really not that much.
Yeah, right? Can I just get a couple outlets? Right?
Yeah, you can definitely get that.
1.7 megawatts. Now they did note that in the transfer that some of the liquid cooling was leaking.
And there was degraded RAM too, which is what prompted some of the sale, if I remember right.
Ew.
Not a lot of it, but there was a little bit of degraded RAM.
But the current bid, so when Ars Technica ran the article, the current bid started at $2,500 and was $27,000 roughly. And when I checked today, the current bid is up to $480,085.
Oh, that's better.
It's actually really not that bad.
Have they met the minimum yet?
I think that was past minimum. Yeah, there was a minimum. I looked at it when it was about 22. Wait, no, it was 17. It was 17. But
I looked at it.
We have a lot of supercomputers at work. Obviously, we deal in supercomputers, and the specs on are not that bad. But in comparison to price, for roughly the same with the newer chips, and depending on what kind of workload you're putting on it, like you're still getting to the point where you're starting to etch eggs, and or your cost of ownership is not going to be viable in the next.
Yeah, to power and cool that computer has to be a huge expense.
Yep.
I mean, all to just run like 6 Chrome tabs.
and arguably, this was to own a piece of supercomputing history.
Yeah, a piece of history, and this is This is also a silicon graphics machine, so you can get an SGI that's newer.
and
So-
has just as much power.
Yeah, no, actually, I think as a historical thing, I'm thinking you get that up and running. Now what?
Yeah. Now what do you do with it?
Yeah.
Unless you want to run a boatload of microservices, and it can do some general purpose stuff, but the architecture isn't the same.
I gotcha.
Bitcoin mining, right, Tyler?
Yeah, well,
Good luck porting it. Yeah. Good luck-
Cryptocurrency mining.
Good luck
You're
porting
probably
that
running
over.
out LLM or inference models, optimizing different like GitLab runners for AI tuning. Like those things would probably be.
Oh, there you go. You just turn it into a password cracking rig at that point.
You could do that too.
Or would you still be better off with just a bunch of NVIDIA cards?
I mean, the new cards, yeah.
Yeah, right.
And not for $480,000, right?
Yeah, probably get a lot. Yeah.
you could.
I
buy
think
a
our
boatload.
new not to be mentioned code name is probably well within that range for individuals, individual modules.
So, Tyler, sounds like you might need to get me a product sample.
Yeah, right.
Oh, there's some ops to go get product samples, and it's definitely doable.
It sounds like I need to build a desktop. So it's like
I think let's stick with hardware before we go to anything else.
Yeah, what
Let's
else we got?
Stick with hardware. Oh, the Hackbat. Where was that story?
that was
yeah,
right near
my
your-
story number 16. Yeah. So it's a Raspberry Pi RP2040 Hackbat is an open source Swiss Army knife pen testing tool. Now, don't get me wrong. This looks like a really cool project, but keep in mind, it's still 2.4 gigahertz only
Yep.
Wi-Fi.
Yep.
Because using SP 32 something, I forget which the one of the really tiny
ESP 32.
one F or something like that was the.
They're all 2.4 gigahertz. If I'm
They're all
But-
2.4 gigahertz, right?
But can I use it to hijack cars in Canada?
If you were to write your own
Probably.
code for it, you could do that. Because the other thing, when I was poking around in the GitHub repository is just the things to print the PCBs and
Yep.
assemble it. It's just the schematic. I forget what the sketch files. Is that what they call them?
Gerber files, sketch files. Yeah.
Yeah,
Gerber
it
files. Gerber was the old way. But
It was files to basically be able to manufacture, if you will, print
Yep.
your own PCBs to get the hardware. It was not the firmware or code to run on it that puts a menu on the LCD screen that tells the buttons what to do. Like you're kind of left to do that all on your own, which
Yep.
I mean is fine if you're into that kind of. It just looked always like that's all. Seems like a lot of programming for me.
yeah, for a clone of the
Flipper, basically, yeah.
Flipper.
I mean, it's a CC1101 was the
Yeah, one of the
chipsets,
the
right?
ISM radios, the 900 megahertz ISM 900 to 433.
Oh,
ISM
come on, and
radios.
unleash
you're
your
right,
inner
yeah.
maker.
I mean, don't get me wrong. I looked at
Oh,
this and
yeah.
I went, yeah, I don't
It's
have
cool.
enough time for this project because I already
Right.
have enough projects.
I never said I did.
Speaking of which, this Friday, I am doing a recording with Steve Sims on the Off by One podcast,
Mhm.
if I remember correctly, to talk about all of these types of toys,
Mm.
especially when we start talking wireless penetration testing.
Nice.
Hmm.
So, are we talking about the type toys that are regardless of whether you have to like print the PCB and assemble it, or are you talking about stuff you have to make?
Definitely more on the more readily available type of stuff, like the Wi-Fi Marauder and the Flipper Zero.
Yep.
So, see, I'm looking at this and having Heathkit flashbacks.
Oh,
Which-
totally.
that shit was cool.
I don't get me wrong. I grew up on Heathkit.
Yeah.
In my bios that there's that I share with folks for conferences and so forth, and I grew up tinkering with things, and that the family television set caught on fire twice, and I helped rebuild it, and it was a Heathkit television, and in the 1980s, Heathkit actually got a class action lawsuit against them because their television sets caught on fire.
Was that before UL standards,
I believe it was.
or were they violating
I-
UL standards?
I don't know if they were, well,
Mm.
because it was all an assembly stuff, so you really couldn't get UL certified for something that you
Oh.
self-assembled. It was something that you bought.
Oh wait, your TV was self-assembled.
Oh yeah, my dad built
okay, I
our
gotcha.
color television in the basement.
Mhm.
And if I remember correctly, Heathkit wasn't the original manufacturer of the kit. They effectively bought it from someone else and rebranded it. And the original manufacturer was the one that had the problem that would cause the TV to catch on fire.
Right.
Oh, I see. So it wasn't user error. There wasn't like a capacitor resistor that wasn't soldered on right or something.
Nope, wasn't a user error. It was a design flaw.
Last time I went to Stockholm to visit the Swedish family, he still had a Heathkit clock radio next to the bed that he had built however many years ago. I don't think it was a radio, just a clock. But it was still working flawlessly, 40 years later or 50 years later, whatever it was. That's awesome.
Larry, did you see my story number 8?
Back.
Your story number 8.
18 JTAG hacking with a Raspberry Pi.
Yes, I did. And this is relevant to my interests.
This is from Voidstar Security, does a lot of training on hardware hacking. They're amazing folks. Hackaday was actually just praising their training and knowledge in this field. And they put together something called a PiFX.
Yep, it's a Raspberry Pi hat.
Yeah, which exposes UART Spy, I2C JTAG, and SWD, which is that's the
serial wire debug. It's the replacement to JTAG, especially when we're stocking ARM chipset.
Is that a 3-pin header usually?
2.
2?
No. Yeah, 2.
Is it? Okay.
2.
Sure.
Yep, 2. Yeah, the PiFX hardware about half, about a tad down the page. SWD via I09 and I11.
Oh,
so 2-pin
serial wire debug.
2-pin, if I remember correctly, 2-pin plus ground.
Because the debug header on the Raspberry Pi is a 3-pin,
right? And it's serial wire debug,
and it's still SWD.
It's SWD.
Okay, I gotcha.
Yep. So it's 2-pin plus ground. Oh, wait, what? I'm looking at this and I'm seeing that there is an add-on board for the logic.
Correct.
The logic analyzer.
Yeah, you can put a logic analyzer on it.
Oh.
So my question is, what are the differences other than like good JTAG support between this and the Bus Pirate 5? Because I think Ian's still working on good JTAG support in the Bus Pirate 5. I know it's on his list if you poke through the forums.
Yeah.
Because I've been spending some time with the Bus Pirate 5. And people are asking for JTAG support. And so I think that's coming. It's definitely on the list. I'm not sure it's very high up on his list. I think in a recent interview, Ian said that he's heavily focused on the logic analyzer component in the Bus Pirate 5 because it has a logic analyzer functionality inside of it, which I'm excited about. So I'm actually working on some content around the Bus Pirate 5, which is why this one caught my eye in this PiFX thing.
Yeah, and so when we do the,
I think I have one of these logic analyzers.
The SEC 556 class. That's the same logic analyzer we use.
Yeah.
We teach folks how to be able to do JTAG with a Raspberry Pi standalone without a hat.
Yep.
SPI, I2C, all of that type of stuff. Like we show them that is possible with a Raspberry Pi. We give them different tools in class to do so.
Right.
Arguably to keep costs down because the other tools that we can use
DediProgs are pretty expensive, right?
Yeah, I mean, not just even the bus. So a Bus Pirate, that logic analyzer and a couple of other tools to be able to do the interactivity is cheaper than another Raspberry Pi, or at least was for a while when we had supply chain issues.
Yeah.
So, but now, and we already get them a Raspberry Pi as part of class as an attack target.
Yeah, so you want to use that for as much as you... Because I want to say I've seen other posts about using the Raspberry Pi to interface with a JTAG header on a board. Right?
Absolutely.
That's totally possible. Yeah,
absolutely.
As opposed to a JTagulator, but that's more of like
JTagulator is discovery.
It just I was going to say for like fuzzing the board to figure out if it is a JTAG header and which pins correspond to which thing.
Yep. I did that.
I mean, aside from questions of cost, you could totally add this to your hardware kit.
Totally. Yep, just you gotta have labs.
And it's an excuse to get more breadboards. I mean, look, go down there. There's some breadboards in the pictures.
Do not more excuses.
Jesus. Now, I wish Bill Spurgeon was here because we were talking about my story number 24, and we were talking about this is the perfect gift for Larry and others. And my story number 24 is a Flipper Zero holster case. So this is like You know, if you want to put your phone on your belt with the clip kind of thing, it's
Yep.
that, but for your Flipper Zero. And I think this should come with cargo shorts and New Balance sneakers and a book about dad jokes.
You
And
shouldn't
white
need
socks.
you shouldn't need the book about dad jokes.
That's right. They should have them in your database already,
Uh-huh.
because
Yep.
that's where you keep your dad jokes.
It's
We should definitely make a
all about
parody
that.
ad for this particular product. That would be
We
hilarious.
should do that'd be hilarious.
Oh my word.
And just for Larry, just for Paul, we'll add the hoodie upgrade option
That's right,
because that's what has to dress in.
dude. This
He's
is just.
not biting.
I need one of these. It's $14 on Tindy, and there's only one left in stock. So,
Oh. Wow.
well, we're not streaming live, so we may have now. It's just between us. It's a race between us to get the last.
Yeah.
Flipper Zero holster
it's
case.
only $4 to ship it.
That's
all,
right.
all I can say is they're 3D printed, so they can print more. There was only
Right.
one in stock right now.
Do they give you the step files? Can you buy the step
Oh,
files?
I don't know.
Y'all are
Then we
bad.
can print our own Flipper Zero holster cases because that's what we need.
I bet if you were to
You need a case with the thumb notch on the bottom and like the slide up the side. So you hit it with the thumb on the bottom and flip it up out of the case. For
Because it's uncomfortable in my pocket. I need it to be on my belt. You know, it's easier access.
That's what she said. Anyway,
Is that a Flipper Zero in your pocket? You just
Or you
glad
just
to
happy to
her.
see me.
it's
That's
actually,
right.
it's actually just a banana.
All right. Sorry.
There's
I
two bananas. Is it another banana? No,
Banana.
actually, it was buy one get one free banana.
Speaking of worms, there's millions of
worms,
IPs.
Raspberry
that are
Pi
infected
Connect.
by USB worms.
Oh, what's USB Connect, Paul? What was that?
I think that's your story.
No, I was going to say no. My
number 3.
segue. Sorry, Tyler. But I thought my segue would go into Raspberry Pi Connect since we're talking about Raspberry Pis.
And then we'll connect. We'll do that one. All right.
So, Raspberry Pi Connect is a new both tool and service to remotely connect to your Raspberry Pi. So, under the hood, it uses WebRTC protocol to establish this is reading from the article, establish a secure peer-to-peer connection between the web browser and your Raspberry Pi device. They say at the moment, the remote service uses a single relay or turn server located in the UK, which may lead to high latency. And I'm not sure how this works, if that, in a lot of cases, is just a broker. So like if you're on the same network as your Pi and you want to connect to it, that turn server just acts as a broker, and then you make a direct connection. But if you're not on the same network across the internet, does it broker that connection?
It says at the moment, the remote service uses a single relay turn server located in the UK.
Right. To this essentially I'm not sure how I'll admit WebRTC and turn servers are new stuff to me, but WebRTC is the protocol that's used by like Zoom and all the others to
Why wouldn't
broker
you
those
just
connections.
use something like ngrok or Cloudflare tunnels or ZTNA?
I mean, there's a million ways to
Exactly.
skin this cat. I mean, you could use SSH with VNC. You could use
Like I'm
reverse
trying to understand
connections
what is the problem that they're
I
solving?
think the problem they're solving, in my assessment of this, Tyler, is they want to make it easy for users who are not people like us with 20 plus years of networking and systems experience to access their Raspberry Pi.
Right. And like,
so it's a flip switch. It's installed by default.
You register for an account, and now look, if you go register for a Raspberry Pi ID and you're going to use this service, and if you're not the audience for this message, send it to your friends and family who are using it. Absolutely turn on two-factor authentication on your account. Okay.
So
because with your account, this is going to be able to access your Raspberry Pis.
Which is potentially on a network that is maybe a little bit more sensitive than you intended.
Correct.
And back to the Raspberry Pi's roots, that it was intended to be a small, easy-to-use platform to put in schools, and that like every student could have a computer at their desk that they could tinker with and so forth. Right. And I think back to that, like this would enable the ability to do remote support. And I think about this from teaching remote for SANS.
Yeah.
That like if there's a student that is having a problem with one of their Pis and it's up and it's on the network and I can go boop and
connect.
Yeah. And we can do remote troubleshooting. Brilliant. I can
brilliant.
also think of a way that I would use this at home to connect to any one of my 30 given Pis on my network at any given time.
Right. Now you could do so on a Pi 5 with the latest Raspbian, it is a little bit of a pain in the butt. Like if you're not if you don't have a lot of experience with Linux,
Mhm.
I can see you might struggle with this. And Tyler, to your question, I think that's the other problem they're solving is in the latest Raspbian, they switched to Wayland. And so a lot of the VNC software isn't compatible necessarily with Wayland.
Mm.
And the other thing is some of the VNC servers that are included or that you can install negotiate encryption methods
Mhm.
that aren't compatible with some of the clients that are out there. So like I use a client called Ramina, and I put a VNC server on the Raspberry Pi 5, and it wasn't able to negotiate the certificate. So I had to use some other VNC, like after reading, it was like, oh, just use this VNC client, and it connected just fine. But like, again, if you're not a Linux person or user, that could be a barrier to entry to go, oh, I'm really frustrated, I can't connect to my Raspberry Pi, which I think is the other reason they launched the service.
Yeah, could be. Yeah.
I mean,
But-
Totally not going to enumerate every single subdomain and or ID on this now.
Yeah, right. That's my now. So, Tyler, you're going in the direction I was going to go next.
Mhm.
Is I'm a little concerned about the implications for this. Right, I'm now concerned that attackers are going to go after people's Raspberry Pi accounts, right? Because it could give you, and I'm not sure how if it prompts you for the password once you connect, or if it's just a connection, right? Like, does it prompt me for my username and password, or
Looks
is
like
it
it's
like
a link.
but is it like BMCs will just have a direct connection to with the console of the server, and if the
Mhm.
admin's already logged in, you're already logged in, kind of thing? That's how
Yeah.
I envision this working. Is if I'm logged into my Raspberry Pi, someone grabs my Raspberry Pi ID and they steal it and they connect, and they're just on the desktop, and it's not prompting them for my local
Right.
username and password on the Pi.
I would assume because it's using VNC, that's going to be console
Mhm.
level access
Right.
to that GUI. But
Yeah.
um,
Hey, before we move on to that USB thing story, I really want to hear about Sam's story number 8,
Yeah.
dangerous rise of GPS attacks. Oh,
Yeah, I
Sam's
know.
on
I
mute.
mean,
There we go.
that's one that caught my attention. Apparently, it's the Russians doing it so far,
Yep.
but they're not
Yep.
only.
I thought it was solar flares, and I say that
Yeah,
like
No, actually, it's
before
valid.
recently that would be a joke,
I know.
but like recently that's a real thing. Like solar
Well-
flares really did
Yep.
impact communications, right?
I didn't know if the solar flares did, but I know the Russians are not only jamming it, they're also spoofing it. And this is
Mhm.
fouling up air traffic. And that's why I was very interested to read the tests in the UK of a superior navigation system that does not use GPS. The current ones work with like gyroscopes, and they're not very accurate, so you have to reset them every now and then. But they made a new one which is unbelievable, using ultra cold atoms and de Broglie interference. So they actually cool an atom with a laser, nearly at absolute zero, and then move it down an uncertain path and measure as the two possible paths converge, measure the interference of that. And with that, it is so precise, they can just use a measurement of your acceleration to figure out where you are, and they don't need GPS satellites anymore. But
Coming
that is
in the
not
new
commercially
iPhone.
available yet.
Yeah, I was going to say, coming in the new iPhone.
Hey, Larry,
So-
can I have some ice?
Yeah. So Sam, I've been following this type of stuff for
Yeah.
a long time. In fact, Mike Poor and I at a Wild West Hackenfest a couple years ago, like pre-COVID timeframe, with some help from our former intern, now employee, released a tool called Waylin. And Waylin was an intent to do distributed monitoring of GPS and comparing it to other services such as GLONASS and Baidu and so forth, so that you could tell when GPS was being spoofed because one of the measurements was inaccurate,
Right.
compared to the other potential other trusted sources, because they were typically only spoofing one of those systems at a time.
Well,
The
it
project
seems
never
like-
really took off, but there was some other stuff that I picked up. Like there are people that are monitoring for this type of stuff all over the planet, and the last stuff I saw was definitely focused around Russia, Ukraine, and a bunch of locations within Russia, especially where Putin was often located.
Yeah,
I wanna-
I don't think there's much of a defense, right? I mean, the GPS signal is really weak, and what can you do until you put up new satellites?
Yep. So yeah. So GPS is intended to operate below the noise floor. So in other words, really quiet. The noise can actually be louder, and you can still pick it up. But the current defenses that I've seen, and that some that we tested not all that long ago, were to take those multiple systems and compare them, which one was out of sync from comparatively to some of the others. The problem is that you now have a potential logic problem in that how fast you switch and which ones you do trust and which ones do you trust at which time and for how long. And that was one of the testing pieces that I did. Is that this company said that they had GPS spoofing protection, and I was still able to spoof the heck out of the GPS because just deny service to all of those other solutions, and then you have one reliable source that is now no longer reliable.
Yeah.
But also, how do you know which one's being spoofed?
Well, if you have 4 sources.
Mm-hmm. Oh,
and,
I see.
And
Yeah.
source 1, 2, and 3 all say you're at F Unit Studios,
Right.
And the 4th source says you're down the street over at the local shopping mall getting gas. Like, which one is right and which one is wrong?
Right. So it sounds like you could reasonably build a detector, but you can't build a preventer.
I think you're right.
I don't.
So
like
arguably
really
not a preventer.
Yeah.
But the ability to use alternative sources. So
How many
you
alternative
wouldn't
sources are
prevent
there?
the spoofing. What was that, Josh?
How many alternative sources are there? There's GLONASS. There's that new system. There's
GPS, GLONASS, Baidu, Galileo, and there's an Indian one as well. So, but then again, they're not all available in all areas of the planet.
That's what I was going to ask. Yeah,
And one of them is Russian.
GLONASS.
Yes, exactly.
Which
and Baidu is Chinese.
To find out, I mean, considering, and Baidu's Chinese, right?
Yeah, if I remember correctly.
So it'd be fascinating to see at various points in geography, like in Hawaii, in Guam, in California, the real-time changes to the systems as a determination of war.
Yep.
Yep.
And Sam, you're on mute.
There's already a bunch to do around that currently, and there was a bunch of stuff we did when tracking soldiers and coming across border in Belarus, or prefrontal staging and or internet traffic for BGP that also curtailed almost every single large scale attack. So yeah, there's a lot of that.
Well, that besides the what's that fitness tracker? Strava.
Fitbit. No.
Strava.
Well,
Strava.
Yeah.
Fitbit, Apple Watch, everything else under the sun. I mean, you put all that together, it's a massive amount of intelligence. Like, it's a massive amount of intelligence.
Yep. Yeah.
And you can actually predict. I mean, like, look, there have been certain threat actors hitting everything on the Pacific Rim. And I'm just going to say that it'd be fascinating to see how their particular system might change on the fly, if you will.
Yep. And speaking of all that data, Josh, if you want to read a fascinating book, go read Means of Control by Byron Tao.
Okay.
Talks about how U.S. Authorities and so forth leveraged all sorts of tracking data that instead of needing a federal warrant to acquire, they just went to the open market and purchased it.
Well, I mean, in the old days, it was vigilant for license plates, and it was, there's so many different privatized intelligence services now.
And it wasn't even necessarily privatized intelligence services.
Sorry, privatized data services, I should say.
Yeah, privatized data services, like the one that really struck me was the Twitter Firehose API.
Yeah, $70,000, I think it was. Which
wasn't quite. They very, very few people actually got access to the Firehose, and one company got access to Firehose, and then they gathered that data, did some analysis, and provided they sold access to federal intelligence agencies, U.S. intelligence agencies, and this wasn't the only data source that U.S. intelligence agencies were gathering this data from, and it was a service that they paid for access to, and thereby did not require a warrant.
There's lots of instances of that.
But so really good book to illustrate all of those instances and which it happened, and it's one of those for us, like, we know that data is out there and this is how it's being used, but still for me it was an eye-opening experience how much data was out there and how it was being used. Like, I know it's there, but it was like being slapped like a big trout.
Yeah. If someone pisses us off enough, we can get access to that data and then use it to our advantage.
No, it's the cost for acquiring that privatized data is lost in the noise of government budgets.
Oh, absolutely.
It is so much cheaper for them to do it that way, because then they don't have to worry about warrants. Then they don't have to worry about the process. They go, I'd like to buy some data. Well, of course, here you go. Put it on my government credit card. Thank you very much. Click, done. Here's the data. Look, guys, we've got them dead cold, red-handed, whatever your metaphor of choice is.
Yep. And this really started to happen after 9/11, when there was the whole, like, we're going to find all the extremists in the United States and so forth, and it just went downhill or uphill depending on your state of reference from there. But we get really down the rabbit path.
I know, and I like how quiet Tyler was during this whole conversation. He's like on mute, off camera. He can't even hide the expression on his face right now.
Yeah, and Tyler, we all knew it was happening, but I think this was very much a book for the masses. Like, this was a book for my mom that maybe didn't realize that all of her web surfing activity and all of the things that she does on her phone and her GPS and her pictures and scraping images from Twitter to find out where Adam Savage lives and all of that type of stuff was not only being used by marketing analytic firms, but it was also being purchased by government agencies in various capacities.
To the NSA agent who sees my browser history, it's my choice what to watch as porn, okay?
Yeah, unless you can tell it's not legal. Never mind.
Consenting adults.
Yes, adults.
Well, I'd like to hear about Paul's number 22, about what's going on at Microsoft.
Yeah, I didn't really read this one.
Wow.
I just saw the headline and it was in my category of, we should talk about it. I linked to Kevin Beaumont's post on the issue. And the way I understand it is that basically this is version 2 of the Bill Gates Trustworthy Computing Memo.
Secure by design type of stuff. Yep.
Yeah. And Microsoft's continued and future commitment to security at Microsoft. But I haven't dug into all. I was hoping someone else had the details on this one. So I do not.
I did see a little bit, and there was very much that Microsoft is now shifting to a security first type of mentality.
This is because they had a breach.
Yes.
Don't get me wrong. Like this,
basically, right?
No,
yeah,
that's incorrect.
More than one breach.
No, they were embarrassed.
Multiple breaches.
Yeah, they were embarrassed greatly as government emails were exposed within the last 6 months.
It has nothing to do with the breach.
Yeah.
It has nothing to do with the breach.
What?
That's obviously a supporting factor. But the main reason that Microsoft is going after security is for effectively 2 reasons. One, damn near everybody that buys their shit, M365, all the different pillars. And these days, if you're in business and you're bigger than a 50-person shop, you buy M365. It's that fucking simple. Okay. And they are all under some kind of compliance framework that requires X, Y, and Z, which you can get through Microsoft. So they're meeting the compliance frameworks vicariously, if you will, through Microsoft. Okay, that's number 1. And number 2 is AI, because they have invested $10 billion fucking dollars in OpenAI, and they're throwing more money at it than is conceivable by most humans. And if they don't fix all the security failures they have in Copilot, and by the way, they have lots of security failures in Copilot.
They do?
Okay. Oh my God.
Have you got an article explaining them? I would like to know them.
Yeah, sure. Hi, it's me. I talk about this every day. So let's explain what the security failures in Copilot are. Number 1, Do you know what the first step of deploying Copilot is? Lock down all your access to all of your data. Do a full entitlement review. How many companies have done a full entitlement review in the last 3 years? Anybody want to guess?
Well,
Because I'll tell you, single percentage points.
right.
Okay.
Okay, but that's really not a Copilot failure. That's that you
That
didn't
is
have
a
permissions in
Copilot
the first
failure.
place.
That is a 100% Copilot failure. Because if you build a product and don't take into account that 96, 97, 94% of companies don't do it the way you say as a deployment, and then you tell them just roll it out anyway, you're failing to do a product market fit, period. So, Sam, excuse me, no offense, bullshit.
That's
Try
a good
again.
argument. Okay.
Okay?
Yeah.
Next. So you have to do a full entitlement review before you do it. You have to know that if you actually deploy your admin licenses with Copilot, they get access to all sorts of neat stuff. If you haven't done your onboarding and offboarding and lateral movement of your people properly, do you know what they have access to? Shit they didn't know they still have access to. Okay? And when you ask a question of Copilot, it answers it with everything that you have access to, whether you know it or not. And much less that, let's talk about the fact that there's all these different Copilot products. Do you know how many Copilot products there are? Okay. Talk to Mubix. Mubix told me there's 26. I went, what? He went, dude, it's crazy. All right. Now, some of them are great. Copilot for data analytics, actually pretty cool. Actually pretty cool. Copilot for security. I'm just not going to voice my opinion because I'll probably be legally liable at that point. But there are so many flaws in Copilot and the way that it's sold and deployed, when in reality, what most companies need is a private AI with access to data, collections of data that they say are good and usable for people to use at various levels. Because if you tell me that you've done a full entitlement review, you've done a full data owner review, you've done a full setup and least privilege review, you're frigging lying.
Hey, if you want your own LLM, there's a supercomputer for sale that can allow you to run that stuff.
I have one. It's called my phone. Okay. These are technically supercomputers, you know. Seriously, not a joke. You know that the phones these days are technically supercomputers by the old definition?
Mm-hmm.
Do you remember when you had to buy it, when you bought the Mac? I think, was it the Mac Cube that you had to sign the waiver saying that you're buying a supercomputer?
Oh, is it considered a munition?
Yeah. Okay. And in the not in the iPhone, in the iCloud documentation, like page 72 or something, it said you will not use this to make nuclear weapons. Not a joke. Okay. Your
I never
phone
read
is
that
a
far.
supercomputer. Oh yeah, who does? But no, in all seriousness, Copilot has some amazing things and it'll do lots of cool stuff. There's a few problems with it. Everybody thinks it's FM. Okay. Everybody that doesn't actually know what an LLM is and an AI is thinks it's FM. FM, by the way, if you're not old like me, stands for fucking magic. And it is not fucking magic. Okay.
I hadn't heard that in a while.
I told you I'm old. Okay. It will do amazingly cool shit. It is not fucking magic. You have to design out what you want it to do. And you have to design out what you want it to take data from and what types of data you want out, all that kind of stuff. It isn't just drop it in place and it does FM.
I haven't heard that since I was a Unix systems administrator in the early 2000s. And I would ask my coworkers, what did you do to fix that? And they're like, oh, I reconfigured the FM module. I'm like, being like the new guy in the group. I'm like,
what do you the FM module?
I'm like,
Why does it have a radio?
This is like before Google. I couldn't Google. I'm like, what is that? They're like, fucking magic. I'm like, oh, you're being funny. I get it now.
But I literally had to resurrect that in my vocabulary because of all the people. Like, there was a startup that I was helping that was like, we're going to drop it in place. Oh, okay. And what are the thresholds and triggers for what you want it to do? Like, we just drop it in place. No. What are the thresholds and triggers for what do you want it to do and how you want it to respond? They're like, don't we just drop it in place? No.
But the FM module is very pertinent to this discussion, right? Because I think we adopt tools and technology with some, like, I don't know, preconceived notions, maybe some data on how it works. When we talk about using these LLMs and AI technology, we have absolutely no idea not only how it works, but also what data was used to train it, what data is going in to these models, which really does make it an FM module, right? And we look at it as this end all be all solution when really it's a tool to help you do your job. But
That's a tool. It's a great tool. It's a cool
it's
tool.
great.
a neat
It's great,
tool.
but we have to understand what data it's accessing. To your point, Josh, right?
Yeah.
How was it trained, and what data is it accessing to get that training, to get you your results? What data is going into it, and train people not to put data into it.
Right. Well, so
And look, I was skeptical until I was like, well, I want to understand like how this code works and if it could be changed, and I could put it in LLM. Like, wait, this is proprietary stuff, and I can't just throw this in a public LLM to understand how it works. Like, I've got to ask my coworkers how it works, because
right.
that would be bad. And I'm like, wait, I know this, but how many people working in corporate America today don't know this and don't understand the repercussions, because it's the FM module. Oh, it's magic, dude. I put my code in it and it spits back my code in a more secure version of my code. That's freaking great. Yeah, now your code's sitting in that LLM somewhere.
And I know I'm going off on tangents. I'm sorry, but then you realize,
No,
by
this
the
is
way,
a good tangent.
it's out your code. How did it learn code? Did it learn code from people that licensed their code to this LLM?
No, it learned code from everyone else's code.
Your code is now a derivative work, and you owe a licensing fee. And depending on how many copies you sold or gave away, you may owe a very significant sum in licensing fees.
It was also based on derivative. It's also based on code that someone wrote that might not be secure or correct.
Right.
Yeah.
Or might not even work.
What I tell people is use the code that it gives you, like GitHub Copilot or whatever, for inspiration. Do not do Control C, Control V. I have a problem.
Because that code, it spits out code and it doesn't work. And then you tell it, you prompt it to fix that code. And it goes, oh, yes, it has this error in it. Here's this new code. And in so many examples, my own personal experiences and some of my coworkers, the code that it spits out, even after 2 or 3 or more iterations, is still broken.
Mm-hmm. So that was my evening yesterday.
You've done the same thing.
So
right?
I spent about 3 hours yesterday with a code-specific LLM to have it import the ZOS ported to C version of Zork 1 to convert it to Python.
Oh, wow.
And I spent 3 hours, and I have a barely functional version of Zork. Now, the only good thing is that it does some of the verbs and actions, and it can display this stuff. The first version, it started up and it said, great, what do you want to do? And I'm like, go north. I'm like, we don't understand north. Well, what room am I in? I'm like, what do you mean, what room are you in? Like, it doesn't tell you what room you're in. And so I had to.
What is this room you keep talking about?
Exactly. So I had to keep adding stuff to it to get it to work. The one thing that I will say that is absolutely fantastic was I did convince it to take all of the current room data and export it to JSON. So
cool.
Instead of being in a ZIL format or some other sort format, so that's easily editable, so that we can create our own custom Zork games.
Aww.
It's getting there. It's getting there.
You know what that means, Larry?
Yes.
You're very old.
Yep.
Yes. That's amongst many things, but
this is true. This is true.
Yeah.
No, there's a lot of good stuff about these LLMs. There's a lot of beautiful stuff, but honestly, there's a lot safer ways to do it.
How did we get here? We got here from talking about how Microsoft wants to be more secure.
So Microsoft wants to be more secure because they want people to use Copilot. They're dropping money by the bucketful, by the barrelful into Purview to make it the DLP and data classification engine for LLMs, specifically for M365 Copilot. They're dropping money by the bucketful into Defender and Defender for Cloud and Defender for Storage and Defender for this and that, so it can watch over all the stuff that Copilot is. Like, they're trying to upgrade all of their products in this world so that you have a fully secure environment for your LLMs to run and make yourself more efficient.
Using AI to secure all of those.
Microsoft security memo is the same as Bill Gates. If you read the quote, and I may be pulling this out of context, I think this is the most recent one from Satya Nadella. It says security team support, blah, blah. And he goes, if you're faced with the trade-off between security and another priority, your answer is clear, do security. That's what Bill Gates said in, what was that, 2002, right? That's exactly what they said. In some cases, this will mean prioritizing security above other things we do, such as releasing new features or providing ongoing support for legacy systems. This is key to advancing both our platform quality and capability that we can protect the digital estates of our customers and build a safer world for all. I mean, that's essentially what Bill was saying in 2002.
I mean, arguably,
He went back to 2002 and he copied and pasted that. Then he ran it through Copilot and he said, put that in Satya Nadella's voice and sent the memo. That's all he did.
And you're not wrong. I mean, arguably, we have this part of ups and downs of history where, and you even think about this from so many times you and I have interacted, like we've got this thing like, oh my God, security's in the toilet and we're going to go and we're going to improve, and security's in the toilet and we're going to go and improve.
Yeah.
And I think this is very much one of those iterations of the ups and downs of
like, oh my God, security's in the toilet. We need to, but like,
and it's a reinvigoration and it's a readoption of that security first policy. And like even at RSA this year, there was a movement and there was a push by and a group, and I apologize for being a little bit woefully behind for adopting a secure by design ethos, and that there's a group behind it, and that you're signing a document that said, yeah, my product will use secure by design first. Finite State adopted that, and we're going to do secure by design.
Yeah, no, and I think that's positive. But I think one of the problems we have in our industry is some of the externally reported vulnerabilities and those taking priority and really taking in what the security researchers are doing and reporting and making that a priority. I think it's one thing to say, like, internally, like what this memo was saying is internally, if I notice something, I'm going to improve the security of it. Yep. But you've also been taking in Microsoft and many other large companies, and you smaller companies, maybe external reports from security researchers. And still today, here in 2024, kind of like, we're not going to issue a CVE for that. Or like, I don't know if we're going to fix that. And that's a huge part of this equation of being more secure, right?
And now,
and also not just owning it yourself, but pushing it down the supply chain. Like AMI, Phoenix, and Intel all had vulnerabilities this week that were disclosed. Some of them by my illustrious coworkers at Eclipsium, I might add, right? And but this is part of the supply chain, and so and if you're in the supply chain, I don't want to call it names, right? Specifically, and poo-poo them. So I'm not poo-pooing AMI or Phoenix or any of those companies, but I'd like to see a more more effort behind pushing the others that are downstream in the supply chain to go, you should really fit. And maybe they are doing that in the background. Like maybe Phoenix is going to the OEMs and going, hey, we had the security vulnerability. Like we gave it a score. It's definitely real. Like you need to fix that. And the OEMs are the ones that are going, I don't know if I want to fix that. Or the OEMs are going, I've got another supplier where if I fix this thing, I can't, like, so it gets like really complicated. But I think we need to, these are the issues that need to be
me personally, I think that it's great for them to go downstream or upstream, as the case may be. Like,
it's both ways.
Go to the next layer and say, like, we had this thing, you guys need to fix this. And I think this is part of what the whole secure by design movement that we saw at RSA is that I think the big thing here is by adopting that secure by design ethos is that we're going as potentially a company that, and I'm speaking out of turn, this is my opinion and my opinion only, that, hey, if we have security issues or we need to adopt security in this practice, adoption of security may impact our bottom line and may have features that are delayed because we have done this right the first time.
Even better, if we do it right the first time, we don't have to delay features because we set ourselves up to have less of an attack surface, less vulnerabilities. Therefore, we can focus on features. And I think you should use that as an economic incentive to go, hey, we're adopting secure by design. You should use our products because we're going to be able to push out features faster because we're not going to be hampered by a lot of the security things because we're going to build that in.
But all of those new features now need to have security by design.
Yes,
which could in fact
delay,
indicate some delays.
But also, I think a part of secure by design is building in a really robust process for updating
Updates,
software,
absolutely.
but also making sure those updates don't break shit.
Absolutely.
And that's the name of the game right there.
Absolutely. Hey, we got
Anyway,
we
let's
got some,
go. We got a
we
lot
got
more
some,
stories.
we got
coming
some
in.
talking about some vocabulary in there, and I was on a call on Monday with some folks from CISA when they said, "Hey, we're apparently inventing new language around your number 13, Paul."
Yeah,
CISA and
Vulnrichment.
Vulnrichments, and like, so we've been waiting to hear about what the hell is going to happen with the enrichment of CVE data with CPEs and CVSS and so forth.
It's still being, in my mind, it's still being batted around.
I think it's still being batted around, but I think this is one that is maybe a good step.
But
in
my
that
thing is,
direction.
when I looked at this, so CISA's got a whole.
CISA has Vulnrichment initiative, right? The
Right.
Vulnrichment initiative.
So what is, I guess we should define, what is
What is
vulnerability enrichment in my mind?
Or
is
Vulnrichment, yeah.
CVE is the tracking component, right?
Yep. Hey, we have a vulnerability.
There's a vulnerability inside of a piece of software. It should get a CVE assigned so that we can track it.
Yes.
Right? It is solely for tracking. And I'm really big on making sure that if there is, or I should say, when there is a vulnerability in software,
Mhm.
there is a CVE assigned.
Yes.
Somehow, this doesn't always happen, which really grinds my gears.
Yep.
But in any case, that's the tracking component. The enrichment part of that
Mhm.
is, what is the severity of that? What is the likelihood of exploitation? What platforms does that?
Hold on.
Sorry.
So, what was the first one?
Severity.
Severity. So CVSS.
Correct.
Yep. What was the next one?
The next one is exploitability factor. EPSS or KEV. Both speak to exploitability.
Yep.
The next one is, what platforms does it affect?
Yeah, or which platforms and which specific
version
components,
which is CPE.
CPE.
The other one we could pick on is not pick on, but call upon in this vein is CWE.
Yep, CWE.
Yep. So which class?
Yeah,
of,
what led to this failure? Was it, we didn't do bounds checking,
buffer overflow,
overflows. So that one.
So these are all
and then
enrichment points.
Then an additional one that the Vulnrichment is intended to address is, I'd argue, threat intelligence, which is exploitation status.
Yeah, is
there proof of concept code available? Is it being under active exploitation with threat actors?
There's multiple layers in the exploitability category, and there was another great post that I wrote something up on 19 state of exploitation. Right, I like this person. I like Patrick Garrity. I think he's a good guy. He wrote a great article. He works at VulnCheck.
Yep. I hung out with Patrick Garrity a ton at RSA, and Patrick's good people.
We've chatted on various platforms, and I like Patrick a lot. I think he's a great guy. And he wrote a great post, right? And it kind of breaks down some of this exploitability. Like, there's a vulnerability. Like, is there a proof of concept is one thing. Is there an exploit that actually works? And he, in his recent article, called that weaponization.
Yep.
And then, like, the third layer to that is, have we actually seen it in the wild?
Yep.
Is kind of another layer
exploited in the wild or exploited by threat actors.
Right.
And those are two different levels, arguably.
No, I agree. Like, that gets into, it's being exploited in the wild, but how is it being used? Who is using it, and for what purpose?
Right.
In the wild, is it just kind of like we see some groups that might be using it for targeted exploits, but it hasn't made its way into like ransomware or like botnets. So I think there's different levels of the exploited in the wild kind of thing. Mm-hmm. Sure. And so this is all part of that enrichment data that leads up to how should I prioritize the remediation for this
Absolutely.
thing? It's really what we're getting at, which is the hardest problem to face today in the industry is, basically it's how much resources should I put behind the remediation for any given vulnerability. Now, some of that's going to be specific to the organization that we've talked about on the show before.
Sure.
Right?
Sure. And that's
but my whole thing,
and that's also where CVSS 3 comes in.
Correct.
that can provide some context.
You can score
to
it
the individual
yourself.
Organization. Yep.
But my thing with CIS's Vulnrichment program is, and there was the CEO of Risk Horizon AI says, however, true resilience lies in preemptive enrichment of all CVEs before exploitation occurs. Waiting for indicators of exploitation to populate CVEs still introduces delays downstream.
Yeah.
I think that's a great point,
I mean,
like, how do we get ahead of it? Like, we don't want to wait until we see it being exploited in the wild to tell people to go patch it, right?
Some of the stuff you may never see IOCs for.
Right. Until which time you do. So
And then it's too late.
And then it's too late. Right. And I think that's it. That's his point. Right.
Yeah.
But my whole thing with the Vulnrichment thing is, it seems to me, now correct me if I'm wrong, my friends at MITRE, right, my growing list of friends at MITRE who I love and respect, and I think they're doing great work, but it seems to me like, or this is also CIS's initiative as well. And sometimes I'm critical of both CISA and MITRE initiatives, but it's totally a productive exercise. Don't get me wrong, there's great people doing great work, but this seems to me, CIS's Vulnrichment is yet another source. It looks to me like they created a GitHub repository that contained this enrichment data that is not being funneled back into MITRE and NISTs. NIST is another great group of people who sometimes I disagree, based on facts and my own opinion. I might disagree with some things that happen there, but I fully support NIST, MITRE, and CISA. Don't get me wrong. But so CISA goes out and creates this Vulnrichment. It's yet another source that I have to consume of all this vulnerability data. Why isn't that being automatically funneled back into, and I think I know the answer to some of this, right? Yeah. Why isn't that being funneled back into NVD's efforts that are, look, in my assessment from what I've seen and heard, is that it's not due to lack of interest, but it's due to lack of just funding and resources that NVIDIA is not able to enrich this data. So if CIS is enriching the data...
Lee's got his finger up here.
Yeah, sorry, I'll let other people talk now. I've been ranting for a while.
And I've got
you
opinions.
Get my points. You got my
opinions.
But
Lee...
Right. So the thing about this enrichment thing is it's putting out JSON files that can be consumed by other agencies and or your own tools that you have today.
Right.
So you're not setting up, you're not parsing emails or web pages. You're picking up JSON files that can be added to your existing system, because it's extra. What does we want to say? More degrees of information, more information for you to parse.
But hopefully going back and enriching previous CVEs as new data becomes available, which is one of my huge things that I harp on. Like, who's doing that? Who should do that?
So that's
is it getting done? And how do we know when it's being done?
And I think that's a little bit to where I want to rant.
That's the consortium, isn't it?
Right. And I think this is where that I think is the big one, is that CISA is stepping up where NVD has failed with their enrichment.
NVD is the first pass.
NVD is tracking the CVEs, and NVD was doing the enrichment, and NVD stopped doing the enrichment with some of the CPEs, and they're not doing.
Well, they didn't stop, but they slowed down due to resource constraints.
Significantly and they're not doing all of that enrichment. Now, CISA is willing to take that on, and I think it's like, this is new. And I think the intent here, and I'm speaking out of turn here, but I think the real intent for CISA is to say, we've got this data available, NVD, you just need to pull this in, and we're going to do all of the enrichment for you. Just use it, pull it in, so you're now back to potentially a single source for this type of stuff. Right. And I think that's the dream, really.
One of the reasons that some of this initiative is coming down, and one of the reasons CISA can actually do what they're doing, is through some of the efforts via working groups and or victim notification initiatives that are almost done, in which CISA is the outlet and bridge between working groups doing pointing into the spear stuff and or passing IOCs and working incidents with CISA, and then that disclosure to the victims in order to protect the people doing the work goes through CISA, and CISA initiates their advisory. IOCs come out as they're being done, and then there's a public-private sector collaboration that bridges a gap for protection, as well as notification from an entity that is a middle trusted agent to an extent, and that's why the enrichment then adds another layer of that information dissemination and or enrichment of what they're currently doing in a space that's important.
I think bureaucracy is definitely at play here.
Definitely.
Because we all break this down, what I'm kind of feeling is we need a more centralized repository of all of this vulnerability tracking and enrichment data. But now we get into bureaucracy, and it's disjointed between CISA, between NIST, and between MITRE. And like, look, we're all on the same team. They're all doing great work. We just need to work together. There needs to be some office, some initiative that ties all of this work together and keeps it all on the same page and all in a cohesive manner, because we all need to consume this data. Look, organizations have to consume this data to go, what is the real threat to my business today? And like all these different government agencies and departments have pieces of this data. Like, let's just put it all together. What I don't want is commercial entities or other entities to go start building their own databases. And no knock on Vulncheck, because Vulncheck is doing this, and I get it.
Yeah, Vulncheck is a little different, but that already started happening with some of the stuff when NVD stopped or significantly curtailed enriching data. And I think really that with what you're saying is that CISA's intent is like, hey, you can't do the enrichment anymore. You will be your outsourced partner, and here's your data back. We're also going to release this publicly, so if you want to consume it that way, but NVD, here's the data. Please pull this back into your feed and do that. And I think I think that's ultimately that's the best case scenario, and I think that's really what they want to do. And I'm speaking out of turn, and I'm not speaking for anyone there.
I mean, we're a democracy at this point. Like, if you are China, then we can do what China does and requires it by law, and then under either arrest and or penalty of jail, you have to disclose those to the national vulnerability database that is required by every company to input that data, and that may or may not become public or get pushed back to the company for a CVE that is public.
Yeah, that's definitely not what I'm advocating for. Right?
But you mentioned the China's laws yet?
Yeah.
That's what I just.
Yeah. Okay. I thought you said Russia. I misheard you. I apologize. But yeah, the fact that they like the China steals it and uses it turns it into their own 0-day factory.
That's what I want to prevent. I want to prevent that from happening. Right. I want this to be in the open. Sorry. Go ahead, Lee.
So what I was saying is this kind of follows on to, and this is my story number 3, the success they've had with their CAV catalog of the known exploited vulnerabilities, right? You're putting more data out there about what's happening, how things are being used. CAV's not so machine readable, but whatever. It's actually working to reduce the time. I mean, I'm not thrilled that a CAV vulnerability average is just under 6 months to be resolved, but non-CAV vulnerabilities are averaging 18 months, so that's 3 times. But
CAV is also not the full picture, though. There's other data points, other companies that are observing exploits in the wild that aren't in the CAV, right? And I think those organizations should probably, in a mafia sense, kick back up and make that data public, right? Make it freely available. I think CISA and other organizations need to be willing to receive that, validate it, and put it in a public repository. Like, let's all make this a better thing, make the world a better place, and have these central repositories that are like, no, I saw this exploitable in the wild, therefore it needs to go into the public domain, if you will, and so we can all see it, right? CAV is still somewhat limited in scope, from my understanding, as to what's being exploited in the wild. It could be expanded.
Speaking of exploited in the wild, I'd love to move on to a story that Tyler picked up on, my story number 3. Millions of IPs remain infected by USB worm years after its creators left it for dead.
This happens a lot.
I saw this somewhere.
I love this. It makes me smile and or terrifies me.
Dude, back in the day,
Mustang Panda is still wild.
We would find botnet CNC servers that were IRC, and I don't know if they were abandoned or half abandoned, and we would come across those
Still with
You and I, our good friend Mike Port and I,
with still stuff
with-
checking into it and new stuff showing up.
New stuff showing up.
Yep.
Oh yeah.
And
Same thing for this.
I mean, Mike and I we collaborated on that once, and I was like, "Dude, look what I found." He's like, "Can I use it in my class?" I'm like, "Absolutely." I'm like, "I don't know. I think I stumbled across this crap," and he's like, "Holy crap, dude! This is like a whole botnet that we have full access to, and like, who knows who's running it? Sometimes there would be people running it, and the funny part was you could like communicate with them on IRC." And be like, "Oh, hey, like, what are you doing?" "Oh, I don't know. I'm running a botnet, and I'm on IRC." I'm
Yeah,
like,
cool.
"Oh, like that's cool."
Yeah, so this specific one was for the PlugX malware that allowed it to infect USB drives automatically from 29. So it was a 2019 variant of PlugX, and which has been around since at least 2008.
Yeah, the new variant, which was I believe it was made wormable, and this is China, like this is Mustang Panda. They created a wormable version of this using LNKs and a DLL sideload back in 2019, 2020, if I remember right. And
sounds about right.
yeah, they leveraged this component to be wormable, but is still checking in.
Yeah,
and is still infecting devices.
So I forget a group of researchers from Sequoia, SEKOIA, purchased the IP address that was used for the CNC, the command and control for PlugX, and they connected to their own infrastructure to sync all the traffic, and then found that between 90,000 and 100,000 unique IP addresses connected to it every day over the span of 6 months, and counted requests from nearly 2.5 million unique IPs. I didn't know we had that many IPv4 addresses left on the internet.
China's botnet's large, man.
How many security researchers? I'm honestly curious. How many security researchers do you think have control of botnets just so nobody else does?
A lot.
Oh, yeah.
Or at least control that the attackers don't know about.
Yeah. I mean, like
Even
in
more.
some form or fashion, control like, oh, Jesus, there's a botnet. I just came across it. I got the IP address that they're reporting to so that I can control it and hold on to, like, not knowing what the hell to do with it at this point. You know, like they hold on to it forever just because.
Yep. Well, I mean, just ask Marcus.
Tyler, I know
Marcus,
you know what to do with
just
it.
ask Marcus Hutchins, right? Like, how many of these folks?
The intel gets passed and used by most of the good ones. So yeah, there's a channel and a feed for allowing people to do something with it. But yeah, it's crazy. You look at and you think about from an offensive development standpoint, you don't always think about the ramifications of your infrastructure long-term past an op or an engagement as you're coding in, which is, I mean, we have kill dates, we've got controls, but sometimes you don't have some of those variants and, or like the ability to know the hard coding of an IP or a domain that you may not own or you mistakenly let go. Like all of those things come into play for like one of the reasons I don't ever let any of my domains that have been part of an op ever go. They have kill dates on them, but at the same time, you're like, from an IOC standpoint and an attribution standpoint, I want to maintain control and be able to provide that that path to discrete, understanding of who owned it and why, so that there's never a false story there. So those things make a big difference. But when big botnets, especially state-sponsored ones, obviously 2008 we were kind of a different time, but just taking over an IP, that's actually pretty awesome, and it makes me wonder if we should be tracking these lists and or have a service or company or government entity that goes and nabs these as they come available or thinks about nabbing them just to maintain potential intel and gathering info.
It's like grabbing a domain name once it expires.
Yep.
I mean, in some cases it's that easy to do this kind of thing, but
so
very
Tyler's
similar.
home for retired botnets.
Ooh. Yes,
Like
I'm just
Kibana
envisioning like the
dashboards in order.
cartoon, like the cartoon that's talking about like retired botnets.
The interesting thing is I am curious as to whether the modern EDR and or modern AV is detecting these infections, because such a large number. Obviously, there's out of date ones. There's ones that don't have AV. There's, old OS. But what is the info? I'd love some telemetry around the info on the infected devices. Is it because the payload is not detected? Is it because the side loading is still a valid warmable method? Like, we still use LNKs and we still use side loading quite frequently for this. So I'm curious, some of that IOCs and the telemetry around this from a technical standpoint would be very interesting. If they release that would be more useful than just saying like, hey, we got a botnet. It's pretty cool. What's going on in this botnet? Like, give me some telemetry around the hosts and why this is still able to call back.
I wanted to go through some other vulnerability stuff, and I read a couple of articles that made some claims. I want to get your folks' take on it.
Okay.
So Fortinet had a report, and one of the things in that report was in the second half of 2023, the average time between a vulnerability being disclosed and actively exploited in the wild shrunk to just 4.76 days. And I thought that was...
How would they know that so well? I mean,
dude, and I love to pick,
bad.
I love to pick on this data. Like, we'll just take this as an example because I got another example as well. So first of all, they focused on just 6 months, right? And I don't know what the other, like, it shrunk to 4.76 days, which means maybe before it was a lot larger than 4.67 days from vulnerability to exploit. But in that 6 month period, they're like, well, it's just 4.76 days now, and we should all be alarmed about that. And I'm like, really? I'm like, doesn't that
Pretty
just mean
specific
like
number? Is this specific to their product and all the vulnerabilities over the last 6
and
months?
it is specific to their threat intelligence. But like, I think this means that there just happens to be a series of vulnerabilities that were really easy to exploit in that 6 month period in 2023.
But
is really what it comes down to.
wait,
Sam,
I got a problem. 90% of vulnerabilities are reported and they're never exploited. So what's going on?
that's my other report. So that's my other report. You want to hear my other number, Sam? Because it's a very astute point. So this one, I don't know where this one came from.
Very big.
This one came from. This was the Vulncheck one.
Not exploited or not reported. Let's be clear there.
Right. So, but Vulncheck says that Vulncheck did a much better job. They looked at data from 2014 to 2023, which is a much better data set in my opinion, because as we established, like, Patrick, like, is a good guy and is like doing great work. But they said 2% of all disclosed vulnerabilities have been weaponized. And we define what that so weaponized is one that's either been exploited in the wild or has had an available exploit capable of delivering a significant payload. So an actual working exploit, not just a proof of concept, or exploited in the wild.
Yeah. So
Only
weaponized versus exploit in the wild are different.
Right. But he lumped those together and said from 2014 to 2023, only 2% of all disclosed vulnerabilities were in that category. Now, some of that data is skewed, in my opinion, because of my own research, in that, like, WordPress plugins represent a large number of vulnerabilities in the CVE catalog, and there's a lot of erroneous instances in that data, right? Like, WordPress vulnerabilities in a plugin will be like, this vulnerability affects all versions up until this version of the WordPress plugin, but that's really not true. It's like one specific version of that WordPress vulnerability. So there's stuff in that data. And those WordPress vulnerabilities, if you look at the CNAs that have created the most CVEs, have ties back to folks that are reporting WordPress plugin vulnerabilities.
Interesting.
Because it represents a huge data source of a lot of different software, right, that leads to a lot of different CVEs. And it's a lot of, like, really badly written, but it's badly written code. Like, WordPress vulnerabilities is a huge code base of really poorly written code that, for the most part, and this is just me guessing, is not very widely distributed. Like, and some WordPress plugins are, don't get me wrong, right? Vulnerability in WordPress is widely distributed software. The majority of those, in my assessment, are like software that is not widely distributed that could have 10 or 20 vulnerabilities in the code base and have a population of users like less than 500. And there's thousands and thousands of those different plugins being, so it skews the data so that 2% is probably higher, right? Like software that we care about, like probably higher because the data is kind of skewed by WordPress plugins.
Yeah, and I mean he is clear. Like, to be fair, this is well done because of his wording, but like 1.1% of vulnerabilities are publicly known to have been exploited in the wild. Like, visibility and or what is released publicly for what is being exploited, and or companies that have the capability to determine and or if they're going to report the fact that they've been exploited. Like, given the number of ransomware attacks and or number of companies going in there daily, that number, I would guess, is probably only accurate because of what's reported and what is able to be put into a metric that is a high fidelity.
I mean, most of us have done incident response. And how many times could you definitively say they exploited this? Like, okay, so let's say it's roughly 50-50 maybe on average. I'm just guessing. Like, sometimes you're like, I don't know. I just conclude this whole incident response. Like, I could tell you, like, yeah, they got in and this is what they did and collect all the evidence. But like a lot of times you're like, I don't, they could have had an exploit for something that I don't know about, even if I investigate it. Cause like, what evidence does that leave behind, especially on some of these appliances and other low visibility areas? I don't have a lot of evidence
that retain it that long. Like dwell time now, if you look at some of the ransomware reports, like dwell time is 6 months to a year. Without detection. At that point, like, logs have rolled for most places and or good places that do have some log retention. It's critical logs at that, and or you're maybe not even getting the visibility you need because these are 0 days or exploits, like not things that are commonly being looked at anyway because they are, inherently new. The IOCs are not something you've put into your visibility database.
I think Patrick from Vulnrichment did. I think Adrian interviewed him on ESW. We should bring him back on this show.
Yes, and
for sure.
Let me know if you let me know. I've got a direct contact to Patrick.
Okay,
we talk a couple times a week
because I liked his report. I really did. But I think it also begs the question, like, and this has nothing to do with his research. Like, now, what are our opinions on, like, given the research, do we just focus on this 2%? Like, how heavily do we focus on the 2% that's being exploited when we look at all the vulnerabilities that we have, given all the evidence that we just talked about? Like, even if there's a shorter window, like Fortinet's reporting, there's a shorter window, and like there's issues with that report, but let's just go with it and say vulnerability is disclosed. You got a shorter amount of time to patch that before it's exploited, and then you've got the Vulncheck research that says, well, really it's like 2% of vulnerabilities are actually being exploited in the wild. Like, is that this
is where like good actual companies doing the right thing, putting that AI and ML pipeline to use around heuristics and detection that get fed in via an automated system, via something like CIS's CVE and or IOCs that are coming out real time. That's one of the only ways. Like, your patch window cycle, your resources, your available staff to do the patching around this is not going to get to this in 4 days. Let's be real. Like, even incident response and the availability of fast spin up teams that do, the stuff that we do at the pointy end, like 4 days we're still in critical mass and we're still dealing with fallout and or how to disseminate the information. Like, 4 days, public's not going to get the information. I'm going to tell you right now.
That's my concern. Is we're not set up to respond fast enough, even to this just 2%.
No, and even if you are set up to respond fast enough, you're not going to get the information fast enough in order to deal with it after it has been discovered being exploited in the wild. Yeah,
we need to go out on a happy note.
We do.
Okay.
CVE 24 23 20,356.
Oh, this isn't the 16-year-old vulnerability.
No, we need a happy note.
Because that's not a happy note. I do want to point out CVE 2008-0166 was a bug in OpenSSL. That if you created a certificate on a Debian system, because it was Debian's bug, it led to poor random number generation, which means your keys are cryptographically vulnerable. And still today, I forget the name of the person who wrote this article, but I linked to it. Still today, there are keys that have been generated with that are used for things like DKIM, which basically means allows you to trivially allowed sending emails with forged DKIM signatures for those hosts, and therefore bypassing DMARC checks. And the author has a tool to check to see if your keys are vulnerable, which is, we talked about vulnerabilities in software. One of my concerns is vulnerabilities in the key infrastructure, right? How do you know if you have a vulnerable crypto system inside of your software that you need to update? How do you know if your key was generated using a vulnerable software that made your key vulnerable to attacks? How do you know that? This article is one instance of that, and that vulnerability has persisted for 16 years in Debian. Like, it was fixed, but like, again, if you generated a key with the vulnerable software and you kept that key hanging around, it's still vulnerable.
Yep.
Those are like, and the things that keep me up at night. That's one of them. Shit.
Pseudo vulnerabilities
and speaking of things that keep you up at night and going out on a fun note.
Oh yeah, that wasn't a happy note.
Your story number 21, CVE 2024, 20,356. 356.
Yeah, this one was fun.
Jailbreaking a Cisco appliance to run Doom.
I mean, because the goal is to run Doom, right?
On everything.
Always been the goal.
In this adventure, the Cisco C195 device family was jailbroken in order to run unintended code. This includes the discovery of a vulnerability in the CIMC body management controller, which affects a range of different appliances. So that whereby an unauthenticated high-privileged user can obtain underlying root access to the server's BMC, which in itself has high-level access to various components.
To everything.
If a smart, as the end goal was to run Doom, if a smart fridge can do it, why not Cisco? And like, this article is super.
Oh my God. The detail in this article is
insane. Hold on, Joshua. What your comment was?
That is a $7,700 Doom player.
Yes.
Lord.
And quite honestly, like, the level of detail that they went into, like, hey, we got firmware, we analyzed the firmware, blah, blah, blah. We've evaluated system calls and to figure out where it was doing the authentication. And we created a tool to modify the firmware, and it failed because UEFI stuff was enabled, and blah, 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 and so forth and so on. And Doom.
UEFI. I wonder, does anybody know anything about UEFI?
I don't know.
All of that work, and like, this is a serious
to run Doom
capability.
To run Doom.
Well, they ran Doom. But like, this is my thing. You run Doom for the lulz, right? But what's really the intent?
Arbitrary code.
Yeah, arbitrary code.
We may or may not have talked about this internally at my day job. Just saying.
I can neither confirm nor deny.
Curious how many of these devices run some edge compute for certain internet providers.
Yeah, I'm more concerned about how many of them run Doom.
Yeah, Tyler. I checked with a couple of people. A lot.
Yep. That's what I thought.
But how many of them run Doom?
They're very popular. They're very, very popular.
It looked very familiar.
Yep.
I like the dancing LEDs. I think that was my favorite part, to be honest with you.
That was cool.
I love making, when you get that level of access and you can make LEDs dance, like, I think that's fun.
I think Doom is better myself.
It really is, actually.
But if you can do dancing LEDs and Doom,
if you could make Doom, like, every time you shoot in Doom, it blinks LEDs on the board.
Yep.
That's
what was the other and we talk about a happy note. There was some other switch that they were able to access the switch, and they used the API to interact with the switch to turn LEDs on and off. And in the switch stack, they actually ran a game of Snake.
Yes,
using the
LED,
the link and the transmit lights on. Yeah,
God.
Yeah. This has those kind of feels.
Does CIMC run a variation of Redfish, Paul?
What CM what?
CIMC.
The BMC where the CIMC is running, is that a
I'm not sure if that's
implementation?
Redfish or not. Redfish is kind of a
Or is this, it's all
it's a
custom,
standard. Yeah,
its
it's
own thing?
just standard. If they sent me a copy of the firmware, we could very easily determine if it runs Redfish or not.
Old?
Okay. Well,
With that-
on a happy note too, last thing, offensive IoT for red team implants was a
Yeah.
Black Hills Information Security post from Tim Fowler.
Part one of
Part
multiple.
one, yeah. And let me say, Larry and I both are like anxiously awaiting part two. So Tim, if you're out there listening, we need to talk. We need
Yep.
we need to be friends because this
Other-
was great. So
otherwise-
essentially, this post is around constructing your own hardware and firmware
for an implant device.
for an
So that-
implant
so
device
that
to
you-
run LoRa.
So you can do
Right?
either exfil, low, and or a CNC over LoRa over a significantly long distance at very low data rate.
So this is like I put a device in my target
Mhm.
and data is exfilling out and
Yep.
it's LoRa, which is who's detecting that, right?
It's like our Dropboxes with additional capabilities, Larry.
What's that?
Like this is like our Dropbox with that additional LTE hack that we were building in.
This is Vapor Trail that
Yep.
Faith and I put together with actual reliability and distance that didn't cost, well, at the time didn't cost us, a couple $100 to
Well, I mean,
what was Vapor Trail using for
those
exfil?
LTE pieces were like to get my Dropbox and LTE was expensive to leave behind.
Yeah. So Vapor Trail was using a Raspberry Pi and the GPIO pin to do FM radio.
Oh, it's the FM radio.
FM radio.
Yeah.
Yeah. But so this is it, but better.
But lower, there's a lot more hardware. Yeah.
Well, LoRa, not so much more hardware, a little bit more hardware, which is reasonable.
No, I was saying more availability of hardware.
Yeah.
Because there's a lot of LoRa boards. I don't know. Maybe we're biased because we're looking at that stuff.
Yeah. I mean, LoRa boards are manufactured by two different folks. They have licensing with two, maybe three now different folks. Semtech's got a sort of a wrap up on their intellectual property.
SparkFun have boards that do LoRa?
I believe so.
I thought I saw that today was on SparkFun. Adafruit has some stuff. Yeah.
The point being here is you can get boards, you can get them, they're easily configured, and the access of the observation of traffic can happen, but nobody's still doing this. This is still the same Vapor Trail problem that it's in bands that nobody's really monitoring for.
Correct.
You can identify it. It's really easy to identify, but getting access to the traffic is incredibly difficult because there's 256 possible combinations of traffic that you can generate based on speed and distance and so forth. Some of it can be encrypted and some of it may not, depending on which layer you're interacting with the lower stack. And who cares at that point? You're doing exfil that nobody's going to see, and you are potentially doing exfil with non-line of sight over miles.
That's the key.
3 to 5 miles. Like you could put this thing in the basement. Like so, some of the early statistics that I
ran into problems with LTE, right? When we were doing the LTE stuff.
And because LoRa is a lower frequency? 900 megahertz.
Okay. And
so like my cordless phones were in the 90s.
Yes, but much better resolution, again, starting to be able to receive data below the noise floor. So like if you think about tuning to radio and you hear like you turn into FM radio and you hear and you hear the FM radio, but now you turn to an off station, you hear you put a signal below the and we can still receive it and decode it. So it's so quiet. And
that's interesting.
Some of the initial stuff that I saw with LoRa when I was starting to look at that a guy took a LoRa station that he was basically sending up pings.
And LoRa just stands for long range,
long
right?
range, yeah.
Long range.
So low power, long range. So long range. Put it in his townhouse in the basement on the floor, underground. And he was still able to communicate and receive pings and acknowledge pings from this device from like 3 miles away.
Wow.
underground, non-line of sight, buildings and cars and other shit in the way.
And people.
Yes.
Which people are the worst for
Ground. It's full of water.
Right. Yes, that water. It's water.
That's why
people are mostly water. Right.
Yeah, and that's why people are like. So LoRa technology is just amazing, and there's a high barrier to entry from some of the security stuff, and we talk about this actually in the IoT class because it's arguably an IoT protocol, but we're starting to see more and more development because of somewhat openness of this, and I've got a bunch of LoRa stuff that I need to do a lot more playing with.
Yeah, projects that have projects.
Yeah, LilyGo is an amazing set of
LoRa
stuff.
They make some great LoRa stuff. Yeah,
but yeah, and there was a one I think we talked about on the show maybe a month ago about some folks that had a LoRa chipset but the firmware sucked. So they rewrote the firmware, and I picked up a bunch of those modules, and I need to do a lot more playing. So yes, I'm eagerly awaiting the next part of this article.
On a closing note, I just want to give props to Tyler because Larry and I were talking about this before the show, and I posted my story number 1. There's a DIY keyboard that can handle up to 3 host devices, and Larry and I are both like, we were today years old when we realized you could reliably get a keyboard and or mouse that can connect to 3 different devices, and you can switch on that keyboard between them. And I come from old school days of KVM switches from what was that company with the proprietary connector that you would
not Trip Light.
Cybex.
Yeah, was it Cybex? It might have been Cybex, right? Where it was physical hardwired. It was a really expensive thing with the proprietary connector. Keyboard KVM switch, right? Keyboard, video, mouse. I would connect them to my Sun Microsystems Solaris servers.
Yep.
And I would be able to push a button and flip between them, right? And holy crap, as technology evolved.
I think I just threw some of those away.
The Logitech ones, though, Tyler, one of them communicates via the dongle, and then the other 2 are Bluetooth, right? Or is that
you can do all 3. You can do all 3 Bluetooth.
Good. Yeah, you can do all 3 Bluetooth, but only one with the dongle.
One with the dongle.
Yeah.
But the dongle, the mouse and the keyboard have hardware switches that allow you to switch between 2 on the dongle via the mouse button. But the 3 computer buttons on the keyboard, those are all Bluetooth. But you also have Flow, which is a encrypted KVM. It allows you to go from computer to computer with the same without having to switch the buttons. It just flows across the screen like
Synergy.
One.
Yeah, like Synergy, but in hardware.
Yes.
Oh,
encrypted and fast. So if you use the dongle, it's much faster. You can use the Bluetooth, but Flow across Bluetooth it's a little bit faster. You hit the edge and then you go back and it's there. You're like, oh, that's pretty quick. But it allows you to have obviously, all of your computers around that have the Logitech Hub software installed, and you use Flow, or you can hardware switch between the 3 with the buttons, and then it's direct hardware input.
Is that the Adder Free Flow?
It's Logitech's Flow.
Logitech MX Key is the
MX Business Key is the keyboard. It's beautiful. It's all metal.
And the only thing I will say is you can't add your own custom key switches and keycaps.
Yeah, doing it yourself. But the one that I found with the DIY keyboard was not Bluetooth. It was physical USB-C connections.
I mean, that's fine because
which is fine. No, I actually like that better. I would actually rather
and quite honestly
run a cable.
You have that, and now as a DIY, you can build your own keyboard format with your own custom switches and your own custom keycaps.
But the Logitech with the software, you can actually build your own custom keyboard layout, macros, and or switches configuration.
Keyboard. I didn't know Flow was part of that keyboard set.
Oh yeah.
But the Logitech... Tyler, you on that keyboard, you physically cannot remove the switches itself.
You cannot remove the switches. You can reprogram the keys from the software to.
I'm out.
Need them cherry reds and them brown smackers.
Yeah, I know. It's a lot of solder. It's a freaking lot of soldering.
Unless you get the keyboards that have the solderless.
I mean, I appreciate all the work that these keys go into to make these beautiful keyboards. But then I'm like,
Larry, you have an impressive collection.
Keyboard
dude, I have a wall
does my things how I want.
Dude, we need to do a whole live stream just on customizing keyboards.
But we should live stream the build of the keyboard that I bought at DEF CON last year. because it's
I
the
haven't
dual.
put together since.
It's in the drawer, but it's the dual separated.
Ooh.
Oh yeah. That's the only way I would build a custom one. That's what I want to do next. So it's probably our most viewed video of the last 18 years is going to be some keyboard build, and we're going to have 100,000
I know,
people. 'cause
right?
it's a whole thing.
It is a whole.
Like these keyboard builds is a whole thing.
I love the whole keyboard scene. The whole thing is just. I love it. It's just fascinating.
Yeah, Paul, the one you posted, if I remember correctly, is ortholinear or very close.
Mm-hmm.
And I could not do an ortholinear keyboard.
What is ortho? It's just
It's 3
flat.
rows. It's 3 rows.
Yeah.
3 rows
And
yep.
a
3
wide-
columns. 3
well,
columns.
Yeah, no.
3 columns. 4 rows.
3 rows. 1, 2, 3.
Oh, I'm sorry. It's
and
no,
and enough columns to do Q
it's
through
that.
P.
It's that. That's
So
4
But they're-
rows.
they're lined
That's
up.
arguably like extended ortholinear. Ortholinear is 3 rows.
Okay.
It's literally the Q, A, and Z rows from left to right,
That's not
and a
enough.
few
I
extra
gotcha.
keys for return and so
Are you-
forth. And
Are you
that's
talking
it.
about the ones that are stacked straight on top of each other?
Yep,
Yes.
Like
It-
QA and
that's what
P are
this one
straight
is.
on.
it's a
There's
rectangle.
no offset. Yeah,
it's
okay.
a it's a rectangle, and it's got your letter keys. And
no,
you
but
want
his keycaps on this one, there's nothing on them.
and you want a number, you have to hit a modifier key to get to your numbers.
That's not. I mean, it's cool,
No.
but I don't think it'd be terribly usable. I think
That's why
technically it's
Logitech
very
makes
cool.
money.
I agree.
It's
When
cool.
Tyler was like, Logitech makes when you just buy, I'm like, oh, that's kind of good. Some of the custom keyboards are just like, oh my god. I mean, I appreciate it. I think it's awesome. But
So something like an ortholinear keyboard to have to do like to hit a modifier key to type a number, I might as well just convert to Dvorak at that point.
yeah.
Like this is completely foreign. Like no.
Well, that concludes the show for this evening. Thank you, everyone. Thank you, everyone, for listening and watching. We will see you next time. Larry, take us out.